Earlier in the week, I was talking mostly about policy, and I'll be talking a little bit about public policy here, but it actually is one of a number of things really we're talking about as we're sort of forecasting for the future. And we're thinking about the future, thinking about our future work, thinking about what the path is ahead for organizations that are serving local communities, and trying to represent civic interests in media as broadly as possible. This is a version of something that I did a couple weeks ago in Fresno at the ACM West conference. You're actually seeing version 2.0. So a better build, I'm hoping. It's okay to record. It's perfectly fine to record. And there's actually a version of the Fresno talk that's up on Internet Archive right now if you want to take a look at it. And also available through CMAC in Fresno, which graciously recorded. So, media trends and habits, generally, I would consider as a constant, consistent pressure that you need to be thinking about in terms of the way audiences are trained, the way audiences consume media, the expectations that audiences have for quality. Very often they have expectations for amazing productions, and they have no sense of what the material cost of anything is. Okay. You know, I was talking a little bit about the amount of money that Uverse, moving away from AT&T communities, has had for local governments. I estimated it's probably about $54 million in revenues disappeared in AT&T states this last year. Netflix spent $100 million on 10 hours of television when they released The Crown. Holy crap. Right? And then when you compare that with the hundreds of hours, in some cases thousands of hours, that regional and local television provides local community coverage on what is less than a shoestring. The expectations compared with your material means are totally backwards, or totally at crossroads, right? And you're dealing with audiences, I think, are increasingly trained to expect things pumped at them for free by multinational corporations. Then they begrudge paying 50 cents once a month to find out what happens with local democracy. Okay? That's a trained habit and a trained expectation that I think is going to be a constant pressure that you need to be thinking about. And as other media forms come forward, expectations increase, it's going to be something that you're going to have to be thinking about in your work. Part and parcel of this is the ever shortening attention economy. We feel this in terms of distractedness in our work, in our personal lives, managing screen time, rationing screen time at home, second, third, fourth, fifth screens in homes, multiple chat rooms going on at once. I mean, and that's just within the media environment. It has nothing to do with what you do in your work life, right? But that's a function of the way in which the media economy has been built across the world. Okay? And even, that is, I think, part of the reason why fake news dominated the discussion in 2016. And it's not because there was a group of Macedonian hackers that was pumping out fake nonsense at the behest of the Russian government, which did happen. There were about 5,000 guys in a room in Skopje tapping away, coming up with crazy ass shit. But it's an economy online built on the idea that getting your attention pays someone else money. Every click you make as you fall off the cliff into nonsense makes somebody money. The entire media economy is based on clickbait, basically. Getting your attention. I think also part and parcel of this is that it's a profoundly anti-local economy. It's transnational in scope. It's not even national in scope. Content comes from someplace else. in your communities. It does not come from your communities. What does that do to local businesses? What does that do for lives, local culture, local history, when an entire economy is built on obliterating sense of place? Okay, now, that was a major theme within the 2016 elections. It's going to continue to be a theme because of the promises made and promises kept in 2017 and beyond. But that is not going away. And even when you look at sort of the logic of how media systems work, or how corporations that run media systems work, they're becoming national in scope. And in many cases they're interested in national and transnational distribution deals. It's the reason why you see all these Chinese, interesting Chinese characters in Marvel comic book films. And actually there are different cuts that go out and distribute to China, where the Chinese doctor plays a much bigger role in saving Tony Stark's life in Iron Man 3. Right? Major character in the film. Well, why was that? They're interested in the transnational market. And you're seeing more and more of that actually being developed, to be able to extract value as much as possible. But it's anti-local. And then I'd say the last thing to really freak you out is that future technologies are going to be changing the way we understand media, in ways I think that we may not even understand fully right now. I won't talk about this too much. There's actually a very good reference you can look at. There's a futurist by the name of Amy Webb, who's based out of Baltimore, who puts out a future trends report every year. And you can actually see over time how those trends have evolved. It's about a 100-page report that comes out every year, early in the year. She put out a report of sort of future trends you should be thinking about if you're in local government, if you're in nonprofit sector, if you're in media, if you care about local economies, any of a number of things. It's really actually very interesting, thought-provoking, easy read. Amy Webb, W-E-B-B. She's written a really good book about online dating. Believe it or not, she as a single woman, she was trying to hack exactly what made a good response to find someone you could date. She wrote a very interesting book about it. And she's written a really interesting book that just came out this last year about sort of forecasting and, the types of things you should be thinking about and the types of things you shouldn't be suckered into. So her major rant is, whenever anyone says it's the Uber of blank, I mean, how many times have you heard it? It's the Uber of chewing gum. It's the Uber of this. It's the Uber of that. It's basically not really. It's a marketing pitch, but it's not really reflective of what future needs are. But if you don't want to get the book, take a look at her future trends report that comes out once a year. She put out the 2017 report in January. It's about 100 pages long, and then she dissects it by sector. These are trends that local government should be thinking about. These are trends, she cares very much about local government. These are trends that nonprofits should be thinking about. These are trends that media organizations should be thinking about, and so on. So it's very useful, sort of thought-provoking and somewhat depressing stuff at times. So maybe you want to do it before happy hour at some point. Anyway, so here's some sort of technological trends that I think will be affecting how people understand media, and also maybe affecting your work. Artificial intelligence is going to probably transform a host of different other technologies as well as companies, and actually will affect how people operate their homes. You're seeing this actually as more and more people have sort of home automation devices that integrate with their online experience. So devices like Alexa. And all the devices that Amazon puts forward. I don't know if anyone has one of these things, but that's like a home automation robot is what that is. And there's actually about a dozen competitors that are trying to find ways into that space, often in connection with broadband companies or content companies. It's the reason why Comcast is very much interested in this space. But beyond that, artificial intelligence will have, I think, other applications that would be very interesting. I mean, you saw one of our vendors here at Central States actually had a speech-to-text recognition system. Now, it was not tremendously sophisticated, but it is like a first step in speech-to-text recognition for captioning insertion. my guess would be you'll be seeing a number of products come out in the next couple of years, which will be much more sophisticated, probably at lower price points. So I don't want to discourage you from diving in and having a talk discussion with ENCO. This is not a product endorsement, but my guess is you'll be seeing other services pop up. And that actually may have profound benefits for your ability to reach communities that don't have the ability to use your programming right now. You know, communities with disabilities who are on the edges of power that very much want to be civically engaged, right? Your job, whether you're a nonprofit or a local government, is your mission, I think, is providing access to necessary and useful information locally. I mean, this is a way for you to be providing that access to increase your scope of reach. And if you don't think that there's a lot of deaf people in your community, there's a hell of a lot of hard of hearing people in your community. It's the fastest growing disabled group in America. 10% of Americans have hearing loss. Right? And then, again, if you imagine, again, the ever distracted economy that I was talking about, think about the number of distracted environments you watch media in, and the usefulness that text has to understand what's going on. And then also, it has a subsidiary effect of increasing search engine optimization so that people can find your content. And it has the added ability of giving you other types of archival research uses. So I don't want to encourage you maybe to be the early bird that gets the worm. Maybe you're the second mouse that gets the cheese. Look at these technologies as they're developing, as prices are going down. They may have huge benefits for impact. Flipping that around, they may have awful consequences in terms of content that's generated. So let's say, for example, you just imagine like sort of fake news generation. What if you develop systems that come up with interesting information to get your attention that aren't necessarily related to reality? Because someone just wants to sell you ads. And actually, those systems are being developed right now. Okay? How do you actually create adaptability or sustainability in your work? Those, I think, should be key terms and questions that you're thinking about as you're thinking about next week, next month, next year, and beyond. So let's talk a little bit about sustainability. I want to suggest a couple of different sort of rules of thumb that help provide balance in a time of imbalance. So one of the rules of thumb I want to suggest is something I'm calling the 30-70 rule. The idea is that no single source of revenue amounts to 30% of the gross revenues for your organization. Let me state that again. No single source of revenue amounts to more than 30% of the gross revenues for your organization. Now, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, I think, for many of us. But I think it's reality in terms of thinking about sustainability over time. When I was in St. Paul, I got that number to, I got my contract in the city of St. Paul down to 40%. So I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was much more stable. And actually, after I left, there was an asteroid hit with my organization. My successor there had to deal with a $250,000 goof up that the city induced in a contract negotiation. So quarterly payment was missed, and he had to basically find a way to improvise when a quarter of his revenue for a year disappeared based upon an error in human judgment that was out of his control. All right? So he had to make some tough decisions, but he was able to survive and grow the organization afterwards. And the organization didn't go poof, right? Because he wasn't hyper-dependent on one contract. So I think that's something to think about in terms of the relationship that your organizations have with franchising benefits, franchise fees, governmental revenue, government contracts, diversifying sector, diversifying entities, as sources of revenue, I think is important for you. Okay? I mean, and that, we've been talking about this actually. You know, Tom Bishop and the crew from Cause Impact were talking about different ways to be able to think about earned income strategies. I mean, a lot of the discussion that was happening in that track here at the conference was about earned income strategies, not donated income strategies per se, although you could probably apply donated income strategies to some of that discussion that was happening. But I would suggest that you need to be thinking about both of those types of strategies. And specifically, you need to be thinking about new program development. It's hard to backfill money for programs that were never set up to be monetarily based. And I think this is actually a problem that vexes a lot of public access organizations specifically. They're set up as non-monetary, and in some cases, anti-commercial entities on a utility model. Open for all, equal access, everybody in. Right? And then suddenly you need to be able to find ways to fund the thing that you thought was going to be the pipe, the utility. So you come up with any of a number of mechanisms to be able to backfill that. My suggestion to you is don't give up on that, but you may need to be constructing other programs that fit within your mission, that are sustained in different ways to be able to build revenue diversity. A way to think about this is thinking about community media work as having a toolbox. And there are many different ways to be able to serve community needs with building information. It's the reason why I think a lot of places we're looking at community radio stations to be able to go hand in hand with community television stations. Okay? Those are different mechanisms, different tools. So instead of just having a hammer, a hammer and a screwdriver, maybe you need to have a vice grip as well to extend the metaphor. I love extending metaphors. So you should be thinking about mechanisms to be able to serve those community interests and diversify your programming to give yourself more stability over time. I love this facility.
They're drilling again.
They're drilling again. Yeah. And the other question of furtherance of mission, which was a sustainability that I think is important, is something I'm calling 2575. And this is hard as well because of the way many of our organizations are set up. 25% of your program costs, your expenses, I think should be devoted to furtherance of mission. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, things like governance, external communications, fund development, lobbying and public relations, research and development. Who does research and development? Nobody does research and development. And then general administration and HR. My guess would be most organizations do this, the general administration and HR function. And maybe governance. Although my guess would be a lot of governing boards are set up with appointments that come through some type of mayoral process. It's a common. That's not like sort of a classical nonprofit fundraising board. It's like an oversight board. It's like a municipal oversight board, right? Which provides oversight, but doesn't really help with furtherance of mission. When I got to this point, I was doing 25%. None of my colleagues in the Twin Cities did more than 6 or 7% of their total costs for furtherance of mission. Okay? I was hearing somebody talk about this, I think Ashley was in your session earlier this morning. He's like, well, we're doing all this other stuff, and now we have to tweet about it. Well, it's because the problem with that scenario is that the organization has been set up to be a program output mechanism. 95% of the total costs are all about covering stuff, creating programs, pumping material out, but talking about the usefulness of that material, talking with talking with multiple stakeholders about why it's important. Maybe the executive director of an organization or general manager of an organization has a little spare time to do this. But I think not enough of it happens, sector-wide. So this, I think, if we want to get to this place, this probably means some choices need to be made in terms of what your program mix is for staff. And in some cases, I think it'll be hard choices. It may mean that you're doing less in terms of program output. It may mean that you're changing up staffing. It may mean that you're bringing in different staff to do different things. Again, these are hard decisions and discussions that have to happen. But I think if you want to be resilient, you have to be thinking about resource development over time as conditions change, because conditions will change. And you have to have the headroom, the breathing room, the slack to be able to stick your head up out of the prairie dog colony, see if that happy tornado's coming your way. Right? I'm mixing metaphors, I know. So the question I'm raising to everybody I talk to is, are we the leaders to do this? Do we have the ability to be able to have those discussions? Can we find leaders in our organizations to do that work? To have those hard discussions? Because they're necessary. If we want to be in it for the long term, and not just be in it for the gig that was sweet before we retired, I think we need to recruit and train people who will lead the work into at least another generation. Okay. And I think that's on all of us. The other thing I think we need to do is we need to build the concept of adaptive leadership into our work. Not that you get the answer right on the test, but that you could identify a problem and solve it. And I'd say to you that leaders within organizations that just tell people to get the damn answer right are not leaders. At most they're test proctors. Right? Did you get the answer right? Will you get it right again next week? Or are you trying to build people, volunteers, board members, staff leaders who adapt, identify problems, solve problems, build greater worth beyond just the job description? And it's difficult. I think it's very, very difficult for people to think about this, but I think it's necessary. Because we need to be able to have leadership come from within all parts of our organizations. It can't just be on one person. So I'll give you some other sort of thoughts about possible futures, and then I'll open up to some questions if some hands popping up along the way. I'm just going to blitz through these a little bit, and I want to kind of end with a positive thought for you. So I think greater partnerships with other learning professionals and communities devoted to literacies, devoted to citizenship, devoted to creative enterprises, and devoted to economic development all make sense for community media work that you're doing. My general sense would be that there are allies in your communities who care about that mission work, who you can find partnerships and be able to develop programs that are significant in the lives of people in your community. But again, literacy, citizenship, creative enterprise, and economic development are sort of key themes to be thinking about. Who in your communities care about those issues? I think greater content creation and curation on multiple platforms is necessary. Not that you're a utility and people just show up when they can, but in some cases you're curating programming or you're creating programming. Sometimes I would suggest you'd be doing it in partnership with those very entities that are interested in building local community and building the worth and identity of your locality. And then we're already seeing this sort of discussion of multiple platform distribution. You'll see this with server vendors. I think it's going to be necessary to be thinking about this because that's the way people will be making meaning in a fractured and fractioned economy, right? you watch something on your cell phone, you'll watch something on a cable platform, you'll read something, maybe at a laundromat, on a bulletin board that's been pinned up while you're doing your laundry. The thing I want to suggest to you is that, using multiple platforms to build meaning has always been part of the media economy. When radio came along, it didn't displace newspapers. It supplemented and complemented newspaper coverage. Newspaper coverage changed. Right? Television comes along, it changes radio. The internet comes along, it changes TV. But I'd suggest to you that people don't just stop using certain forms of media. I mean, we still haven't gotten rid of this stuff, which is 4,000 years old. Still haven't gotten rid of it. There's actually very interesting media projects in some places around the country that are, creating bulletin board material. And there's this great project out in New Orleans for community television content. Or actually, it's not community television; it's online content, local journalism. Where a colleague of mine basically staples questions to phone polls in neighborhoods. What's up with these streets? What's up with these potholes? Want to talk? Give me, and he puts out his phone number. But that's the way people communicate in neighborhoods there. They're like, I've got a missing cat, there's a party on Saturday, right? I've got free stuff in front of my house, there's a garage sale. I mean, it still happens, yeah? So he thought, why not actually use that as a mechanism to get people to come to him in individual neighborhoods to talk about significant issues in their lives. So he does basically, every month he does like newsletter flyering with a phone number and an email address, and then he basically interviews people who call him in on an issue. And he creates a community news story based on that. Okay. So that's using a very simple old technology that's still meaningful for people as outreach, to reach people in significant ways. I mean, there's two ways to think about this. I mean, there's the old, why do you rob banks? What's where the money is? Adage. I tend to say you fish where the fish are. So you need to be sort of a student of what's happening in your community to be able to think about ways you're reaching people. Okay. I think we'll probably see more sophisticated or nuanced nonprofit, for-profit, and for-societal benefit organizations. Tom's seminar here kind of alluded to that a little bit at various points in time, but I think we're seeing that. Some of the joint powers authorities that operate community television around the country have 501c3s that I think they're beginning to think about specifically as charitable entities, not necessarily just as a nonprofit holding company, right? But that means you actually think like a charity and work like a charity, not as just sort of a way to get a tax break on purchasing paper, which I think is actually one reason why a number of joint powers authorities I know got 501c3s so they could get the tax exemption certificates to be able to buy free stuff, buy tax exempt stuff. I think you're also going to see mergers and co-ops exist. I think it's just going to have to happen. And then the last thing I would just sort of say is I think the idea of your power as a convening presence, your power as a place, both literal and metaphorical, becomes more important in that environment that I'm talking about. You, I think, may find it very, 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 very fruitful to be thinking about yourself as placemakers, as specifically as community builders. I think that was part of the idea when we changed our name X number of years ago as a national organization. But your specific power to bring people together to talk about things that are important in their lives, I think, becomes highlighted and heightened in an environment where less and less and less content is specifically about local community. And that's actually a role that I think you need to embrace. So with that, love to kind of have a air conditioner in this room. But let's talk about it. That's my contact information in case you don't have it. Right, so, I mean, another way to think about this is the difference between generating output and deriving outcomes.
Yes.
Right? You know, you can generate like a bajillion hours of content, but if no one uses it, there's no meaning that you're building. So I think, and I don't want to say this to reduce the value of First Amendment platforms within our work. First Amendment platform is not all of our work. And I'd say if you do government television, that's not a First Amendment platform. Right? It's a civic platform. Right? And then there are other amendments and other freedoms that you're trying to support in that work. It's like you're dealing with more of the sort of the four freedoms that Roosevelt talked about, rather than just one freedom of speech. Right? And I think another way to think about this specifically is that instead of just sort of like generating content and building meaning, what's meaningful in the lives of your community? What do they need? How do you become indispensable in that meeting? I think those are all things that are really, really powerful and resonate.
One of the things we've been doing is using our studio for meeting room. You know, that it's not all production that goes on in there. That you know, we started off with staff meetings, but then also as far as if we're going to have an outreach thing, we're going to have a producers meeting. We're always having it in the studio, so that as far as getting people in.
So I'd go a step farther, and I'd say you want community meetings in your space.
Exactly. Yeah.
You want Chamber of Commerce meetings in your space. You want public discussions in your space.
I was keeping it within an access realm because I
work in a
library.
I'm pushing back a little bit. I'm pushing back a little bit.
I work in a library.
Sure. Okay.
And 10 years ago, as far as we have major renovation, and one of the things we wanted to make sure is that we are a third place.
Right.
As far as that, and that has been hugely successful. We bring all kinds of different community organizations into the building, and that it's environment rich in picking as far as the Chamber of Commerce is right next door in our meeting room, and we go over there and record lots of different events.
Right. So, but I think bringing those partners in to be able to have them do their work.
Yes.
Not just do a video about what they're interested in, but actually having them do their work in partnership with you is the issue.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. It is hot in here. Anything else? Come on. Nothing? Okay. Oh, Tom.
If you're building from scratch, you're walking in the door and you say, my community needs community.
I think about a news service. I think about a news service because communities have less and less news coverage about any type of issue. And I think about ways in which I can engage people in the government coverage that I'm doing. So it's not just meeting coverage, but it's ways to have people use that base layer of information to be able to be citizens, right? I mean, the theory beyond this is not PR. We have a bunch of meetings, we're just talking about these meetings. It's like we want people to engage with their government so that our democracy is healthy. So I think about that as, sort of like ways to have, maybe there's like a civic engagement role in terms of the program output. I would do an environmental scan of what people use and what people don't have. And then I'd also do an environmental scan about who is in my community and who will be in my community in the next 10 years. In St. Paul, we had 3 waves of refugee placement from 1980 to the current day, based upon wars in Southeast Asia, then based upon sort of destabilization in Africa, and sort of post-Soviet Africa. And those were all sort of drivers then for reload. And the fact that we had a very, very strong nonprofit economy, and Lutheran social services played a very, very, and Catholic Charities played a very, very deep role in the Twin Cities life. It made it a good place for that resettlement to occur. And then as families were successful, you saw secondary and tertiary immigration in those communities. So, the Somali community in Minnesota is probably 60,000 Somali Americans in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They are not deemed to be economically interesting. I mean, they're not, you don't see any commercial programming on CBS in Somali, right? Big Bang Theory is not in Somali. Just saying. Well, why is that? That's only about 60,000 speakers there. They have information needs. Their information needs are not being met by the commercial media system. Opportunity, right? So I think in some ways you have to be thinking about sort of like how your communities are going to be changing, or what their needs will be down the road a little bit. So I'd look at that too. Maybe you have a significant language population come into the community. Developing services in that language might be extremely useful. It's one of the reasons why I like radio could be a very, very useful tool, those types of things. I also wonder about social enterprise youth media publishing. You'll see a number of youth media organizations around the country are doing publications. They then sell at a modest profit to go back into the work that they're doing, and they actually support stipends for young people. There's a great project that came out of Baltimore last year in reaction to the riots that happened in 2014, and it's a book that was put together by a youth media organization that basically is a series of photo essays about young people's lives in different neighborhoods. It's called This is Baltimore. It's extremely moving, and it's like an enduring piece of media. And they had like a big, huge exhibition about it. People are really proud about this thing because basically it has both this it's sort of multiple messages. One is these young people can become creators and actually can have impact in civic discussion. And then it also reflects the pride and the realities in people's lives in the community, as opposed to someone parachuting in when there's a crisis. Extremely powerful. Great media project. Not on video. It's okay. It's okay. You wonder about like a pop-up gallery. Beginning to see this happening in different cities, is that basically you have storefronts being occupied by nonprofit community arts organizations. They're trying to get local expression. Local expression, again, is something that we do. Yeah. And it's not like a permanent installation. It's like sort of like a 60-day pop-up with a series of events programmed into it. And it's about placemaking and community building. Great projects, extremely meaningful, tied into economic development as well. Very often they're showing off local businesses. They'll get local caterers involved, or local restaurants involved, coffee shops, artists. They'll have concert events with a pop-up, lecture series, any of a number of things. But the idea is you're trying to create audience and place and create meaning about something that's important. And my guess would be is that if you wanted to, you could probably create some very interesting video programming about events within the pop-up. But who runs that? That's someone who's probably a placemaker, right? And again, that's like, I mean, the other way to think about this too, in terms of like strategy in your community, is like, you don't necessarily do the same thing, but think about like all the things that you're good at and go 5 degrees off. And it's like an adjacent thing that you could be very creative and partner on. Create. It doesn't have to be the same thing. The creativity lies in that just like 5 degrees of adjacency.
I've got a summer job that the library has a summer concert series.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the process of fundraising, getting sponsors for that, which puts me in the opportunity to talk to these different organizations. And obviously I'm raising money for the concert series, but we're getting a lot of content out of that concert series as well, and also building relationships into the musicians and that community within our city.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, another example of this is, issues coverage that you do a partnership with local newspapers.
Yeah. Yes,
We're
doing that as well.
It's a great way to develop content. It's a great way to cross promote on other platforms. It's a great way and it's like you're not just repeating their stuff. You're co-creating
exactly
with somebody else.
And the type of people they bring into the studio is a lot different. It's a higher level than what they normally have in the studio.
So my argument to you is that that's a way to be able to build resilience in your organization.
Yes.
Nothing? Come on. What do you got?
So well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to stick around for the end here, which are the closing meeting. I'll have some announcements about stuff that ACM is doing that I want you to be involved in or you should take advantage of. But I want to thank you all for the opportunity and for everything we can do every day. It means a great deal to me. Thank you so much.
Okay, we were just at the ACM conference, the regional conference, and you're a familiar face for a lot of people.
Yes, I am Patrick Hughes. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, with the Dayton Access Television. You're probably familiar with Melissa Mills. She used to be on the board. Where's Melissa Constantine now? She's married. You're probably familiar with her since she used to be on the board. And I came down, like I try to do most of the time, get an education to increase my skills to see what I can pick up.
What's your opinion of the influence of local public access station on your local community? You've been doing this for how many years?
20 years.
Right.
It's very popular in Dayton. It's as popular or even more popular than the network televisions. It's huge influence as far as community matters. It encompasses everything. The religious community are heavily involved with it. The political community is heavily involved with it. The social and the ethnic communities are getting the word out. They're heavily involved with it. It is completely necessary in the Dayton area. So it is something that is very beneficial. If you want to get the word out, Dayton Access Television is something that has practically become the backbone of Dayton. The city commissioners support it wholly. County commissioners they give us their feedback with it. Everybody supports us wholly, and we have several commissioners, city commissioners, and county commissioners that are on the board of Dayton Access Television because it is a vital aspect of the community.
For somebody that doesn't have public access, a community that doesn't, that'd be hard for them to understand how you could say it's become the backbone.
Yeah, well, let me see. Well, keep up on community events. We broadcast all of the city commission meetings. We broadcast all of the county commission meetings. We have the women's board of election.
League of Voters?
Women League of Voters. They sponsor the elections, the debates. There, you got the information coming in through there. We have several attorneys who put on shows there to educate the population about the law. We have the ombudsman who comes in, who puts on a program to help the people there. And the Ohio Civil Rights Board comes down and puts on a program to help education. And then we have about some 600 churches who are a member of Dayton Access Television.
600?
600. 95% of our members are churches, the people affiliated with churches.
And so the churches feel that that's important to them.
Oh, very much, yes. I said we have a separate channel, one for Dayton Access and one for spiritual. And that is 24/7, 7 days a week. It is very popular.
Yeah, I mean, the economy is not the same as it was like 40 years ago. And so when things are kind of falling apart.
Well, for $50 a year, it doesn't matter what the economy is, that's a pretty good deal.
$50 a year? That's
$50 a year for membership.
to belong to your,
Yes.
to have a show.
Yes, yeah. And to learn everything, to go to the classes. We teach what you need to know, to take the equipment out and use it. We teach you how to use it, and then you can take the equipment out and record your program. Then you bring it back in, we show you how to edit it, and then put it on the air for you. I mean, for $50 a year, that's pretty good. you
Right,
know.
right.
And then you get involved with networking with people. So if you have a project, you get to network with people so that you can build up your project, and you work with other people. And we have training programs where you get to work on live television programs. So it is quite a little farming club that we've turned into for the local stations there. They will call us and say, do you have somebody that you can send over because we're hiring? And we've had people who have been hired out of our Dayton Access, out and gone to work for the local network televisions. It is very popular here.
And it's not going down. It's still very viable.
It's not going down. There is a higher need for it.
Really?
Because the need is there, is getting the people in to fill it. There is a great demand for video there in Dayton, and we just don't have enough people to fulfill it. It does take a discipline, and it takes people who are willing to dig into it and learn it.
Are the schools involved, or where has been your?
Well, we've
involvement?
had 2 schools who have come over to develop their curriculum. Two of the what do you call it?
The access station, or
Not the Catholic schools have come over.
oh, the Catholic have.
Yeah, the Catholic school. 2 of them, Chaminade and Alter high schools, have come over to develop their video or their communications courses. They come there. They first they start off sending their students there to learn, and they slowly developed their courses, and then they took it over.
Okay.
And in fact, we went over and helped them set up their equipment to make sure they were on the right footing.
Wow.
So it kind of developed out of us. They sprung up. Got 2 classes, 2 schools who have developed their communication program based on what they learned through Dayton Access Television.
So there's really nobody in the government that doubts how valuable this is.
No. The government, as our executive director has been very clever at getting government funding out of us for the next 10 years.
Wow.
So I give you some idea just how much the government thinks about us, what we're doing.
Benefit to the community.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And can you give your name again for the audience?
Patrick Hughes. I'm with Dayton Access Television out of Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, Ashley. Now you know who I am. I'm Peter.
Hi,
and
Peter.
you're Ashley Morris.
Yes.
And we just finished the regional conference for the Alliance for Community Media.
Yes.
And you were on the board.
I'm on the board. So I am secretary on the board. Also, I am involved with the Michigan Alliance for Community Media chapter. I'm also secretary on that. So we just finished our awesome spring conference here in Cincinnati. It was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of stuff. National reps were here from the organization to talk to us about all the different things nationally that's going on. Kind of gave us the climate of what's going to happen the next few years, so that was excellent. I just want to say people get involved because this is the time to get involved. In community media, go produce your own shows, come to conferences, learn what you need to learn. We have production tracks, so you learn lighting, that sort of thing, but then we also have kind of sales tracks. That's what we did, was a sales track and how community media centers can get more involved in different outreach projects. So that was really interesting as well.
Now, were you at South Bend last year?
Yes.
You were at the one that South
Yep.
Bend had, and you're up there with Mark
Yep.
Monk and the whole crew up there in
The whole
Kalamazoo.
crew. Yep. Yeah, so I'm from Kalamazoo, from Public Media Network. I do marketing and promotion there. So I manage all the social media, the website, pretty much anything having to do with online media. So we also have a PR person. We're very fortunate in that. We do 3 film festivals a year. We stay really busy, like everybody else. But yeah, there's just being involved in this kind of organization is great as a volunteer or as a board member or as, getting involved with just your center. So
This is a wild question, but if all of a sudden you disappeared out of Kalamazoo,
yeah,
what would the average person, what would they feel if you were no longer there?
right.
What?
I think the thing that we as community access centers don't really know is how many people actually watch us. We don't have a Nielsen rating, so it's kind of hard to judge who watches us besides if something goes wrong. If, a meeting is not on, that sort of thing. Then we get phone calls, and we know people are watching. But if we just, as community media, just poof, disappeared, people are not going to be able to tell their stories. And that is the most important part of this entire thing.
Right, it's living in a community
Yes.
where you can hear stories.
It's all local. You know this is your neighbor. You want to know about your neighborhood. You want to know about your city. You want to get involved with the government. This is how. This is starting at the most local list of levels, starting in this little tiny building and expanding outward.
Right, and Mike Wassenaar, the president in Washington, D.C., big part of his talk
Yes.
was the local is kind of being threatened.
It is.
And this is a way to
fight back, and this is your First Amendment right. This is your way to say, hey, this isn't okay. Let's fight this and show everybody that, hey, we have great media here. We have wonderful people here. We have great education here. We have great government here. So starting from that local center and expanding outward, what we love to do is we show lots of educational content. So not only is it, teaching Spanish on TV from an imported program, we also have our own program called K-12 360 that focuses on all the municipalities and their school districts. So we have 3 school districts, 4 school districts in our community, and we go to each one of those every month and we find the good stories. We're telling the good stories, not the bloody, gross, icky stories. We're not talking about corruption. We're not talking about scandal. We're talking about students, teachers, administrators. We're talking about the city manager who just donated a bunch of money. We're talking about the great foundations in town. We're talking about the nonprofits. We're talking about the good things, and that's what people want to know. People, especially this year of how crazy it's been, people want to know there still are good people out there, and there is.
Right.
So we are responsible for telling those stories.
And you have local citizens. I know Ed Sackley gave this keynote last year. So you have people that are in your community really pushing for this.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important to a lot of people in our community.
Are you from Kalamazoo?
I'm actually from a little bit south of Grand Rapids in Byron Center.
Okay.
So I got my education from Fair State University in television and digital media production.
Okay.
Had a few internships in PEG operations, one at WKTV in Wyoming, Michigan, and then moved to Midland, Michigan, and I had a year internship there. So then the job at PMN popped up for government production, and wonderful job, and then I moved to marketing. So.
Well, I listened to your talk on social media. It was excellent.
Thank you.
So thank you for
Yes.
your time here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Beth, we just finished up on the successful Cincinnati Alliance for Community Media Regional Conference. Last year it was South Bend,
Yep.
and you were kind of heading it up.
Kind of, sort of. I am the chair of the region, so that means I'm really just like the organizer of our board of directors. So it's really wouldn't have happened without the support of them and all the people locally who really helped really pull it together, because we're people from all 4 of the states, so Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio, and so it's kind of challenging sometimes to get conference planning done when people are working in all those different places. So my team did a really, really nice job at working and getting stuff done so this could happen.
Right. So I know Steve was there last year, and he was saying we're going to have a real good conference in Cincinnati. I need to make it. Of course, I was able to make it.
Yeah.
People had fun, but then you had some serious talks. Mike Wassenaar is the president.
Yep, president and CEO of the Alliance for Community Media, and he likes to try to come to these regional events to give just a little insight on what the national organization is doing, what the work he's doing in Washington and just around the country, and kind of what our goals are and stuff, and also just to see like how we're functioning and how we're operating. So it's nice to have him travel in and be able to do that too.
Right, and you are up there with Mark and Ashley in Kalamazoo.
Yep, and Laura. Laura's in Kalamazoo too.
Okay.
Yep.
And you have quite an interesting operation up there, because Ed Sackley was the keynote speaker last year, and
Yep.
he is gung-ho for
Yeah.
all the kinds of things you're doing.
Yep. He's one of our board members and really supportive of the organization and everything. So we're lucky that we have a nice board that supports PMN and supports us. Supports a budget that allows us to be able to go to these things and participate in these types of conferences and workshops and stuff. So we've been pretty fortunate that way.
What did you think of Mike Wassenaar's talk? Because he's got this real fantastic vision.
I think it's scary in a way, but I think it's pretty accurate. He talked a lot about just the future and things that we might see coming in the next few years as it relates to our field. And I think it's really valuable to have that kind of perception, and at least to get everyone to think about those different things. So I think it's really valuable to start those conversations, so that as we leave these conferences and workshops where we sit and get energized and talk about this stuff, that we can actually go out and do the work and kind of keep those thoughts in the back of our mind, and how we can use technology as it advances, how we can keep different public policy and legal issues in the back of our mind as we go forward, and all those little things that are in everyday life in our places. So
Right. I mean, he puts quite a burden on the importance of community media to strengthen the local community.
Absolutely. I think now, especially because of the different political climate that we're in, and we are really important for hyper local content. I think that we are the voice for people, and I think that people are re-engaging with community media, and I think this is the opportunity to go and grab those people as they feel, the communities feel a need that they want to say something. They want to say, no, I don't like this. They want to give pushback to the system, I'll say, or whatever it is, whatever their thing is, in all positions. We're not the biased party in all of this. So it's like we want people to have cordial discourse, and we're the places to provide that opportunity.
Right.
And there's not a lot left. So.
Well, you did a great job.
Well, thanks.
And this is Beth Romeo. I know you just got married, so you have a new name. So.
Yeah, that was good. You remembered.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Peter. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk, and hopefully people will see this and get energized and want to come to the next thing that we put on, right?
Right.
So.